So far, we've seen how the design of early bicycles was focused on getting them to move faster without having to crank the pedals as quickly. The solution came with a chain driving different sized gears or sprockets. If one sprocket drives another of the same size, they turn at the same speed. But if a sprocket turns a smaller one, the smaller one will turn faster. For example, if the smaller sprocket has 1/3 the circumference, it will rotate 3 times as fast. But turning the wheels as fast as possible isn't always the goal. If you aren't already moving quickly, a chain that turns the wheel faster could create overly hard work. Each rotation of the wheels sends the bike forward a distance of 1 circumference. If one turn of the pedals is geared to send you forward 3 wheel circumferences, and you are starting from a dead stop, that would be 1 hard turn of the pedals to make. Sometimes what is needed is more torque, the force to get something to rotate. If the bike is starting from a stop, or moving uphill, it's harder to get the wheels to rotate, and more torque is needed. But supplying torque comes at the expense of speed. Consider this: if you have a wrench and are trying to loosen a tight bolt, it's going to be harder to move it with a short wrench. A longer wrench is going to give you more leverage to move the bolt. A quarter turn of a long wrench means you're able to distribute your effort over a much longer distance to turn the bolt 90 degrees. With a shorter wrench, you have to compress all that work into a much shorter distance, making the work harder. The longer wrench may make it easier to do the work of loosening a tight bolt, but it comes at the expense of speed. If the bolt is loose and you want to turn it quickly, the long wrench gives you an expanded circumference around. Moving a few inches around with the long wrench turns the bolt less than the same distance covered by the short wrench, making the short wrench the better choice for faster speeds. If we apply this principle to the sprockets in our bike, turning a small sprocket would be a good choice for moving the bike quickly. But if we are starting from a stop, or going uphill and need more torque, it would be better to turn a larger sprocket. In order to satisfy both situations, the initial solution was to put a small sprocket on one side of the rear wheel and a bigger sprocket on the other side. The rider could be speeding along with the chain drive on the small sprocket, and when they came to a hill and needed more torque, they could just stop, detach the rear wheel, flip it around, reattach it, and affix the chain to the larger sprocket. This may not be the most elegant solution, but it did work. Starting in 1895 with the first multi-gear chain-driven bicycle, there quickly came literally hundreds of patents for systems to switch gearing on bikes called derailleurs. They featured different lever systems to switch or derail the chain from one sprocket to another while maintaining tension in the chain. These designs progressed over time to become more reliable and sturdy. However, these derailleurs were not initially accepted by the newly formed bicycle racing organizations. Switching gears without having to stop, remove, and reattach the wheel was seen as a cheat. This might not be surprising, considering how initially riders and racing organizations didn't even want the geared wheel to be on a ratchet mechanism, allowing it to spin freely going downhill. It was a better testament of skill to force your pedals to whirl around madly as you sped downhill. But eventually, in 1937, the Tour de France allowed all riders to compete with a standard derailleur bicycle manufactured by the cyclist and bicycle developer Oscar Egg. His bicycle would help pave the way for future innovations in bicycle gearing, and would prove to be even more useful than the design of his aerodynamic butt cone.